Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I am your host, MGCovers. This is episode 29. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, excited that you're here watching this podcast with me. A lot to talk about. Roll through what we're going to talk about. College football on Saturday. Talk about some statistical properties. And, of course, we'll dive into NFL. We got back on the win train with NFL and ended up changing back to an old model. We'll talk about that. And we're going to talk about, wrap it up, talking about ROI and why most people in this business have unrealistic expectations about the amount of money that can be made in this business. All right, so let's dive into it. We'll take a look at college football. Let me pull up my screen here. Can show you. Now, what was interesting about college football, we only had 4 plays via the model. I think that's showing NFL. Yep. NCAA football. We only had 4 plays via the model. I didn't exactly play all of those plays. I kind of went off script a little bit, but I was really surprised at that because previously, you can look, if you're watching this live, the week before, looks like we had like 11 plays via the model. And then the first week we started, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plays via the model. The week before that was about 10. So the volume was way down via the model. I think that was probably the first week that I felt like lines have tightened up a little bit, which means not as much discrepancy in the lines. A lot of my lines matched up with the books line. But nonetheless, we still came out with just a smidge of profit, went 2-2. We had that tough beat with UNLV. Felt like we should have won that one. House got us there. And then played South Carolina and win West Virginia on Saturday. We did cash West Virginia as a dog. Had really good line movement on that one. I think we had West Virginia -8. So that brings us year-to-date with college football, 20-15, which is 57% and up 5.99 units. So the goal for college football and NFL combined is 10 units total. And of course, with soccer, our goal is 10 units for the end of the year. And again, talked about this briefly last year when you're setting goals. If you set a realistic goal, it kind of gives you enough time to hit that goal. I know that sounds cliche. It's the same in losing weight. Like if you say, hey, I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, if you just sort of tell yourself, well, I'm going to lose 2 pounds a week, it makes it more realistic. And a lot of that can be translated into sports betting as well. So you set an end goal and then you figure out how you can do it weekly. So, hitting 10 units with college football and NFL combined seems very realistic. And so does soccer, even though we're still down in NFL and soccer slightly. Again, it's only, what's the day? October 7th. So I feel like we have plenty of time to hit those goals. All right. So a lot of success with the college football model, but I want to talk about something I saw posted on ESPN. I don't know if I can pull this up, but they posted this that I think it was the first time. Let me read this. I think ESPN tweeted it out. They said this is the first time since 2016, 5 of the top 11 teams lost on the same day. Those teams were Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri, Michigan, and USC. Now, what did all of those teams have in common on that particular day? All of those teams that lost were away. And we talked about this before. Teams at home in college football win 70% of the time. And I just checked the year-to-date stats on that. It's 69.9%. So I'm right on the number. Vanderbilt cashed as a plus 912 money line dog. Arkansas cashed as a plus 410 dog. Minnesota cashed as a plus 252 dog. And Washington and Texas A&M won, but both of those teams were favorites, so no real surprise there. But again, understanding that home field advantage relationship in college football is huge. And one thing I did briefly this morning, I'm going to go back and check this. I'm trying to figure out, because we had low volume, we only had 4 plays via the model, and knowing that home teams win, 70% of the time I went back and I looked at, this is interesting now, and I'm going to show you something similar in NFL. I looked at teams that were favorites via my model and were home teams, and the spread was -7 or less. That would have gone via my model 6-3. So what I'm trying to figure out a way to add more volume to college football if we run into a week where we had this week where we had like 4 plays. So again, I'll repeat that. So if they were a favorite via my line, via my model, doesn't matter if the line was -1. Texas A&M was -1 via my line, by the way. Or if they're -18 and they're at home and the books line is less than 7, that would have gone 6-3. And the reason I set it at -7 or less, it's just easier to beat a team by less than 7 than it is more than 7. And I know that sounds cliche, but I'm going to show you something NFL very similar to that as well. And going back to baseball, that's something that I did. I played no run lines this year in Major League Baseball. I would play a team if the line was up to, if it was -149 or less, I would play that team. And I know this sounds elementary. Is it easier to beat a team by 1 run, or is it easier to beat a team by 2 runs? It's easier to beat a team by 1 run. So it sort of simplified the process as far as the handicapping goes. I'm going to research that more with college football. But again, can't stress out enough about home teams. So if you can incorporate statistical properties into your handicapping, you're probably going to come out ahead long term. So fascinating with regards to college football. Now, let's dive over into NFL and talk about what we did there. We had, last week, which was the first week we were actually wagering, it was a model that me and one of my stat model partners created, felt good about it, even though I think it was down, what was it, down at -3 units for the first week. I think that was right. However, it was only 1 play away. I think if San Diego would have won, we'd have been profitable slightly. I made the decision to go back to a model that I had back tested for 2023. That model went 29-19, low volume. And the point I want to make here is that regardless of how you do this business, if you back test in a model, whatever, you're going to have to take risk. That's just the nature of this business. I go back to what I did with Major League Baseball. When the model was up 24 units, it went down to 13. I had to do a quick back test. I took 1 day off of wagering. I back tested like 50 games, not a huge sample, and then I rolled with that model. A lot of people might argue, hey, that's not a big enough sample to roll that out and to wager real money. But I mean, it was a good risk because that model, we ended up with 35 units. That model peaked at 52 units, which was good. But I'm saying if I would have waited around and not back tested it, I would have probably missed out on some profit. So however you slice it or dice it, this business is going to involve risk on a daily basis, however you do it. If you do a huge back test, a small back test, and that's just the way the business is. And so I made that was risk involved changing the model and going back to one that I back tested, and I felt more comfortable, and it just felt better. And I'll go ahead and show you the plays we had for NFL. Yep. Okay. So we had Tampa. God, that was a tough loss Thursday night. I'm still not over that one. And then we had Jets on the money line. Ironically, we only had 1 dog that we played yesterday. Chicago, big blowout win. Baltimore, really good comeback there. Kind of got lucky there, I think. Washington was a nice blowout win. Houston, last second field goal. San Fran lost. Green Bay got the win, and then Pittsburgh lost. Interesting, we had 2 games that were basically won or lost on the final play. That was Houston and Pittsburgh. So we could have lost both, won both. And it just goes to show how tight NFL is. Now, I want to show you a fascinating stat that I share with you, a fascinating stat I read about NFL. And this is almost hard to believe, but it goes back to what I've talked about NFL being a money line dog sport, meaning if you play majority favorites. Now, we did yesterday, but we had confirmation via the model. Favorites this year, or you could say dogs, it's even 37 and 37 ATS. So favorites have covered 37 times. Dogs have covered 37 times. But check out this stat. When a team is plus 5.5, now we're talking about dogs here for NFL. When a team is plus 5.5 this year, they are 19-4-1. I'm going to repeat that. When a dog is plus 5.5 or greater, they have gone 19-4-1. And what do we know about teams that cover? They also win a majority of the time. So of those 19 teams that covered, 19 won outright. And you look at what happened yesterday with Arizona. Arizona won at plus 7.5. And you also had Giants won at plus 7. Again, it's confirmation. If you're going to play a dog in the NFL, even if it's 7, you're probably better off playing that on the money line. And I'm pulling this up here. And here, for example, if you'd have played Arizona, that was plus 290 money line dog. And even if you would have lost the Giants plus 275, you'd still been profitable. So if you just played Arizona and Giants yesterday, that was 5.6 units on 2 plays. Or if you took the points, you'd have won 2 units. That's a good point right here. So if you would have taken the points for both of those teams, you'd have gone 2-0 up 2 units. If you would have played, say, Arizona won and Giants lost, you would have won the same. Yep, because 2.9 minus 1, 1.9 units, basically the same, and hit 50%. How about that? So got to play those money line dogs in NFL. Huge. And I'm not real sure why you're seeing so many of these dogs cash. I mean, normally you do. And what I thought was one of the reasons I thought scoring might have been down, but actually scoring is up. I checked this morning as well. If you remember, if you back up, I think 2019 or 2020 teams in NFL combined were averaging 48 points a game. Last year it was all the way down to 42. That's why all those unders were cashing. It's up 2 points now. It's up to 44. And I think a lot of that is teams are starting to learn how to play against this cover 2 man, cover 2 zone. So, each team, both sides are averaging, 1 point more. So still might want to investigate that to see what's going on. But nonetheless, dogs are still the way to play. So if you're going to play a dog in NFL, extremely advantageous to play that on the money line. Oh, and let me show you something. This is interesting. I made this point on Twitter. Let's go look at the let me show you the NFL model. I'll show you the back end. Okay, what you're looking at on the screen, we have my lines. We give a team a power ranking, and then we just subtract them. Like, for example, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, we had Tampa Bay 18. Atlanta was a 7. So that was a differential of Tampa Bay minus 11. And I have a formula I used to convert it into a line. It was Tampa Bay minus 7.5. Now, this is what's wild about the NFL. There's a ton of variance in NFL. When I read Billy Walters' book, I think back in the beginning of the year, he said he would play anywhere from 5 to 10 teams on a Sunday. Well, hell, there's only 16 games. So he's playing almost 70% of all the games on a Sunday. And my initial reaction to that when I read that, I was like, there's no way he can be profitable doing that, because you're basically saying that 10 of the lines, majority of over 70% of the lines have value. And there's no way that the books would be wrong on 10 out of 16 lines. But that's not really his point or why he did it. He did it because there's a ton of variance in NFL. So teams, that win in NFL, that margin of victory is going to land either on the 3 or it's going to land on the 7 the majority of time. Games are won and lost. You had 2 games yesterday that were decided that I played that were decided on the last second. Very tight. So you're better to play into that variance. And let me give you an example. All right, so let's look here at the differential. So let's say I say, all right, well, I'm going to play the top 3 teams with the highest differential. So you can see here, Arizona, we had Arizona as 11 power ranking. San Francisco is a 32. You subtract that. We had San Francisco minus 21 differential. That would have been a loss. Let's go to the game late last night, Pittsburgh. We had Pittsburgh as a 30. We had Dallas as an 8. Pittsburgh was a minus 22 differential. That would have lost. The next one was Green Bay and the Rams. Rams made a comeback there late. We had Green Bay as a 29 power ranking, Rams as an 8. So that was a Green Bay differential of 21. So if we had played the top 3 teams in differential via my model, we would have gone 1 and 2. Instead, we played 8 games. 8. So we played half of the games. That's including tonight's games, and went 5 and 3. And I'll go ahead and give you a free play for tonight. We have New Orleans as a 26 power ranking, Kansas City 14. So we have a differential of New Orleans minus 12. That calculates into a line of minus 3 for New Orleans. And yes, we will be playing New Orleans on the money line tonight. So again, if you're going to play NFL, not saying that you can't do it, but if you play low volume in NFL, it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. You're going to have some luck, and your model is going to have to be way sharper than mine, my friend. So better to play into that variance and play a lot more volume as opposed to less volume. All right, finally, the last thing I want to talk about is expectations of profit in this business, and had a really good conversation with a client this weekend. And I want to walk you through this because this is real important to understand, even if you can't see the screen, which I'm not going to show it, but we'll talk about it. All right, let's say you invest $100 into sports betting every day, meaning you adhere to the, say, have $1,000 bankroll, and the way I teach, you risk no more than 10% per day max, meaning if you got 3 plays, 1 play, 7 plays, you're going to risk no more than $100 per day. So in a month's time, you will have invested $3,100, 100 times 31, $3,100. At a 10% ROI, which is high, that's a high ROI, you will have made $310 for the month. And that's probably the best it would be, $310 for the month. And that breaks down to $72 per week. So if you wager $100 per day in sports betting, max, irregardless of the plays, like $100, your expectation of profit should be no more than $300 a month. Right? And let's take that up to $1,000. If you're wagering $1,000 per day, your expectation of monthly profit should be around $3,000 per day. And I know a lot of times you guys see these charts that will say some of these fraudulent handicappers will post, our $100 clients are up, $7,800 for the month. Number one, it's probably not true. And majority of the time, the way they're calculating that is, maybe that's like 7 plays. So you're really not wagering you're wagering $100 per play, but the correct way to calculate it would be the amount you're investing total each day. So it's going to average, it might average $500 or $700 per day as opposed to the max 100. So got to be realistic. And then that's on a 10% ROI, which is a really high ROI. Let's say you're only hitting 5% ROI. So that means your monthly, and that would be good. That would be $150 per month, wagering $100 per day. So again, I don't think people really understand, and that's why ROI is so freaking important to understand that, because regardless of who you are. And I would say my ROI is generally higher than most simply because we play a lot of dogs. But for the average, that's probably what you can expect. So if you're wagering $100 a day and you're expecting to make, $1,000 a month part-time, it's not going to happen, my friend. You're going to have to get your bankroll up, a lot higher than that. And that's generally a good way to calculate it. Just take whatever you can max wager per day, and then multiply that times 31. That gives you the total amount wagered. And then take that times 10%, which will be the high end, and then multiply that times 5%, which would probably give you a realistic average. So anyway, hope that helps. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. Wrapping up episode 29 of the Underdog Sniper podcast. Don't forget to like this video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and talk to you guys the rest of the week. Peace.